Welcome to the show. Today we are here with Kirk Buchner. And did I say the last name right?
You did. Most people always go Buchner, so
I
thank you.
almost did. I almost did. And now I'm going to second guess myself every time I say it. So, but I got it right. That's good.
Yes,
How are you doing, Kirk?
doing fantastic. Rob, how are you? Thanks for having me on.
Oh no, this is I was excited when Kenny told me about the topic. It's like, oh yes, we got to talk. And it's about the man behind. Oh, this way. There he is.
Yes,
Just to show everybody, here's the cover of the book, Instant Classic by Kurt.
yes.
What
But
made you
great,
decide?
great Chavo Guerrero Sr. Of course.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So sorry. I guess I should have mentioned his name. He's kind of
Yes.
important in this one too.
Yeah.
What made you decide on this topic for a book?
Because he asked me.
Oh, that'll do it. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. So it was really a long process. When Senior was still alive, I interviewed him for, and I'll do my shameless plug here on my website, notinhalloffame.com, and it was what thank you so it was one of those it was one of those things where I was still doing everything in the infancy, so like I would transcribe everything and I would still send it to the people in question just to make sure, like, are you okay with everything? And he asked me to take a few things out, and I did. Maybe in the wrestling business some people don't do that, so he was impressed with my work and asked me if I would help him with his autobiography, so I said I would.
Really? How long did this take?
Took a because I was still working full time, so about like 2.5 years, and I was still working on the site and my own job, and yeah, it took a long time to go to for that to happen. But I did meet up with him in in Bandera, where he was living at the time, Bandera, Texas. So try to get more of a feel to it. So I would send him like I tried to do like a chapter a week and just see, okay, so what do you think of this? So like we would do like these long interviews, and we would try to do it chronologically as the best we could, because he's done so much stuff, so sometimes his timelines were off. There was a bit of a struggle, I'll admit.
Okay. Was that 78 or 88? That kind of thing.
Well, yeah, so he said like I was doing this here, like no, Chavo, you were in the WWE at different time. So
Okay.
I don't mean to speak of him. He's like a phenomenal guy, and
Well, like you said too, when you
yeah.
do that much stuff, it's got to be hard to keep track of it. I have a hard time with my life and I don't do anything.
Well, it's as I'm sort of like doing, again, shameless plug on my side. So like a lot of what I do is like ranking people for various halls of fame and stuff and whatnot. I don't remember where I rank people, and then I've had people say, "Well, you've got this person ranked here." Like, oh, do I?
Yep.
So I guess it's sort of like the same thing. So because he did so much.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Now, when you went into this, were you familiar with this history, or was this stuff you
No,
learned as you got going?
no, I wasn't that familiar with him. I mean, I knew who he was, of course, and like when I did interview him, I did a lot more research of him. I think like a lot of people our age and younger, we all know the Guerreros from Eddie
Mhm.
predominantly and Chavo Jr. So I mean, I was aware of Chavo Sr.'s history, but not to the degree of what he accomplished in Japan and in Mexico, and really how big he was in Los Angeles. That I was not aware of because I
Really?
wasn't I didn't see LA territory, and unfortunately, not a lot of that survived in the video format. So a lot of his work in LA is not there, which is really sad because there's just so much that he did.
Well, and that's one of the thing I think the younger generation doesn't fully comprehend is the territory aspect of wrestling.
Mhm.
Because now if there's a superstar, it's global or
Right.
nobody knows them. There's no such thing as a somebody big in LA, but not in the rest of the country.
Yeah, exactly. And that was something that I feel like I'm older. I'm 50, but that I'm still older to that era because like you were mentioning to me before we went on that you're a fellow Canadian, so you probably grew up like I did, and almost like a whole WWE thing, and not like, oh, there's other things, and then learning from stuff on the magazines.
Sort
That's
of.
how yeah.
I used to watch UWF and
Oh,
NWA,
mhm.
but then when we were right at the cusp of WWF as it's formed under Vince,
Right,
so we watched the first WrestleMania and that sort
right.
of thing. So yeah, I had maybe 4 or 5 years of just a little bit of territories, and then it was
Mhm.
full blown. world.
Yeah, because like when I grew up, so like the first thing I saw was WWE or got into that. I guess so it's WWF at the time, in the same WrestleMania era, and then I'd see other territories that would be on local television where I grew up in Toronto. So be Lutte International at that point, which I didn't have an appreciation for the Montreal territory, but there was a show there, and I think at one point they were showing a Vancouver show, and then Stampede, and then was shown the second incarnation, not the first.
So curious then, because I know growing up when we did that, I got a lot of the Ohio territory stuff because
Oh,
I'm right across the lake from them, right? Um, did you get to find any footage of Chavo Sr. in the LA? Because there was tape trading like mad, and
some.
that's how we found out about stuff.
Not a whole lot though. So a lot of it was he would be telling me things, and I try to find it the best I could. So like there was a lot that I found, mostly a lot of interviews, not a lot of matches. I found a lot of matches from him in Japan,
Okay.
around the same time frame, but there's not a lot floating out from him in LA. Unfortunately, a few interviews with him and him feuding with Roddy Piper. So that was my mark out moment when he called Roddy in front of me. Didn't get an answer, and then he played the response after, where he said, "Of course, amigo, I'm going to write the forward." That was my, because I was a Roddy guy growing up. So
Oh yeah,
yeah,
Roddy and Jake. Those were my
yes.
two go-tos. Yeah.
And yeah, just learning all about his history that I knew he had, but just doing that whole deep dive of how pretty much, and I don't think I'm talking out of turn here. He made Roddy Piper. Piper
Really?
said in the forward that he was the one who taught him how to work.
That's interesting. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, because like Piper at that point, I mean, Chavo was still in his mid 20s, but Piper was a few years younger and hadn't really done anything yet. He was just some scrawny kid from Winnipeg, as he said, like in the forward. So for him to come down there, like that was the first time he was ever in a main event of anything. And Chavo himself was only a main event guy like a year before that.
Hmm.
And he talked about how he was made by Ernie Ladd.
And see, the one thing I bet you this book is full of, and you would know for sure, is road stories. Because when it
Yes.
comes to territories,
Mhm.
that's the blood of the territories is the road stories.
Absolutely. The great thing I think, and obviously I'm a little biased here, but I think what I'm really proud of, I'm really proud of Chavo Sr. at the time, because he's a very proud man. I say it in present tense. It's still hard to believe he's not with us anymore. Uh,
Yeah.
where he owned his flaws, which is a hard thing for any of us to do, especially as men, right?
Yeah.
We don't open up to where we screw up, and he did. So there's a lot of raw things. There's really the rise in his fall. He's very open about what went wrong in a lot of places, and in a lot of cases it was his own pride, his own ego. But it's hard, I think, when you're that big before 30, and then you're in a middle spot later. He kind of did it in a way backwards from what we
Okay.
know of the territory era.
Interesting. Well, when you're doing this research, I've got to ask. I know it's probably in the book, and I am going to
Mhm.
buy it to
Yeah,
read it. But
yeah.
what was the one craziest thing that you found out about Chavo Sr. in all this
Uh,
research?
uh,
If you can pick one.
yeah, I can. Well, I think a lot of the fans, or the current fans now, remember him in 2005 when he was Chavo Classic. His demons caught up to him, and they weren't really publicized, but he talked about pretty much how he just fell right back into old habits and really killed his last big run. I mean, I knew that he sort of disappeared, and you read in the dirt sheets that he no showed, but you don't know why.
Okay.
But then he opened up why, and it was just basically he fell back into uh, he was getting money again,
Yeah.
and he's open about that. I think one of my favorite stories that he told about is when he met John the Wad Holmes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so like in a party, I'm trying to remember. I wrote the damn thing, and I can't remember whether it was LA or San Francisco.
That's a
So
clashing of professions.
yes, yeah. So just like he was talking about like the cocaine parties and stuff, like, which is, you know, not something I could completely identify with, or not at all. Rather, I don't even know why I even qualified that.
Well, you have it in your head because you see stuff in movies, but
Yeah.
the reality of that time period, they were insane parties, you know?
Yeah, I think also too, going back to your other question, I did not know how much of a friend he was with Andre the Giant.
Mhm.
I did not know that at all. I mean, I learned before that he wrestled him, that he even teamed with him a few times in Japan, but he was like that was a very big influence in his life. Was Andre?
We actually have, someone watching going, "Roddy
Oh,
Piper versus practically the whole Guerrero family in
yes,
LA during the late '70s."
yeah, absolutely. And he was like, those were like some phenomenal stories. And as soon as he left, when he tried to do something else, like the territory fell apart a year after. It just didn't last without him. Granted, the way things were going in the '80s, it might have not lasted anyway.
Well, with everything that you've do you think the dissolution of the territories destroyed his character?
Ooh. His character or his career?
Well, I say character as career because, people know them as a character, but
Yes. Now I'm thinking about it because sadly, as we look in the WWE now, we see a very diverse group of performers. Back then, if you've got, unless you were in LA, which was a highly Hispanic territory, or other territories, or Texas maybe for that matter, okay, we've got our Hispanic. That's all we needed. So I think, yeah, that was sort of a big thing. So like in the mid '80s, like when he tried out, because he did wrestle a lot of matches, like for a full half year. I didn't know that in '87 with WWF, but he was never
really?
on TV. So, and as we were talking about that, he said like I probably never would have had a shot because they had Tito. And they only
Yep.
needed one of us, which is a strange thing to think of in 2022, but in 1987, sadly, like that was it. I mean, you look at the African Americans then, it was Junkyard Dog, Coco Beware, and Slick. Maybe Butch
Yep.
Reed for a year, and that's it. You
And
know,
before that, Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas.
right, right. So he was pigeonholed that way. So it was really hard, I think, for him to break out of other areas that were non-Hispanic. They just didn't think that way, unfortunately. Now that's not the case at all, which is fantastic, but different
So
time.
if he came up now, he'd probably have a better shot than he did then.
I think so. I definitely think so. I mean, especially too, like when you look back at his old matches, I mean, like he was just this consummate worker. He could fly, the inventor of the moonsault. So, I mean, I could just imagine what he would be doing now if he was a young man. So, like, he would be probably in that. There's no reason for me to think that with it, with his charisma that he couldn't have been as big as Eddie was.
Yeah.
I really believe that. Again, I'm biased, but I truly, honestly believe that. And he was one hell of a talent. Like, he could do everything. He didn't always get a chance to show that. Like when I was looking at his old stuff, LA as a babyface. Again, I'm biased. I love the heels. Right?
Yeah.
Just absolutely love the heels. But it was a different thing. But then when he was just showing everything that he could do, like after,
Well, and I think it would have worked because that's what Eddie did. He was a bigger man that could fly, and usually only the little guys could do all that. But
but
yet he did it.
Eddie wasn't that big, like relatively speaking. So
Okay,
like when I first met Chavo, like the first thing I thought was, "Damn, I'm taller than you,"
yeah.
and I'm not tall at all. But there was that larger than life presence. So I mean, you got to figure, like looking when he was there with Eddie, Eddie couldn't have been more than 5'7".
That's true too. And see, I guess I keep comparing him to Ray because Ray's a flyer like
Right.
crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, you're right. I'm definitely wrong on that one. But yeah, it would have been interesting to see him in today's market with
Oh,
the
for
talent
sure.
that, like you said, the originator of the moonsault. Like
Yes.
when you dazzle someone with a brand new move like that,
Mhm.
you kind of take a little piece of history right there.
Yeah. I believe that was Meltzer's, or I don't know how that works. but move of the year in '87. But he was doing that before. So
Mm.
it's either him or Poffo. I mean, I think we're doing variations of that, but I'll have to go with my man. If he says he was the inventor,
We could have dueling moonsaults with him and Brock.
yeah. But yeah, Lanny's though was like when he'd land like flat, and Chavo would do that as a dive, like in a backflip, kind of like just like if you remember when 1-2-3 Kid pinned Razor and Ramon.
Okay, yep.
That was his. So
okay,
yeah,
more of a splash style than a flump.
right, yeah. So that was what he was doing first, and from what I can tell, yes.
That's awesome. I'm going to throw this back up here because this is the book you need to read. Instant classic.
Love
All
that
about
picture.
what's that?
I love this picture that I found.
That is a great picture.
But yes.
That's why I had to put him behind me too. So he's
Yeah.
watching over this interview.
Yeah.
So now we had talked just prior. This was kind of your first delve into a wrestling autobiography.
Yeah.
All right. I understand it's a different world when you get into this.
Well, it's different for me. I have never done anything like this before. I don't know if I'll ever do anything like this again. I certainly learned a lot from it. If I'm ever asked to do this, I'll approach it in a completely different way.
Yeah, well, it does. You have to set aside a ton of time
Yeah.
to do this.
Well, it wasn't so much the time. I enjoyed doing it, but it was. I think I needed. It's also knowing what I know now. So
Yeah.
I would have pushed because one of my big regrets is this book was done before he passed away. He passed away like 4 years ago, but it was done, and I just said, okay, and he said, okay, well, I'll do what I'm going to try to push it this way, and I should have pushed him to just get it online. But he's old school, right? So he wanted the hard copy, he wanted the whole publisher, and I didn't push it. I should have pushed it. That is my biggest regret. And then he passed, and then I didn't know what to do. So I just sat on it.
Well, yeah. What do you do? Like at that point. So, but
do you talk to the family? And I did, but then they didn't get back to me. So and that's the other regret. I should just put it out anyway.
So, but it's out. It is out now.
It is out now. Yeah. So yeah, those are my two big regrets because I should have just pushed Chavo harder, and because he's so proud. I didn't know that he was dying. I mean, well, I did, but I didn't believe him.
Okay.
Because he called me after a few months after it was done, or maybe half a year. I could be off on that. Maybe a year. And he said, okay, well, I need you to help me get this out because I'm dying. And he was, but
he said it just like that?
Yeah, he said it just like that.
Okay. I would have taken that with a grain of salt too, because people say that a lot,
Well, also too, because but as it turns out, he was calling me from hospice.
Oh, okay.
But I didn't know that till later, because then he died 2 weeks later, and I read it on TMZ that happened, or 2 or 3 weeks that he passed, and I said, yeah. And then after that, then as we were talking for like 20 minutes, I was like, yeah, I'll do everything I can to get it out. And then he said, oh, but I think I'll be okay. So then I thought he's going to be okay, but he wasn't. He passed away of liver cancer, liver kidney, but likely due to a lot of the things that he did.
Yeah.
But he made amends with a lot of the people that he hated. I mean, there's 2 people that he despised, and so like I'll say this about the book. Everything that is in the book, with the exception of the last chapter, was approved and seen by Chavo Sr. Last chapter, I took a little bit of liberty there because I had to go from that conversation, and that was one of the rare ones I didn't record because I always recorded every conversation we had. So I had to go from a lot of memory and just on that, and a lot of the anger he had towards like 2 people in particular, Conan, who, ironically enough, through the legend, and I always said I'd put you over every time, Kenny Casanova, thank you, sir. The legend Kenny Casanova, not just the greatest wrestling manager, but also the greatest wrestling author. Thank you, Kenny.
Yeah, he's done a lot.
He has. And Through him, Conan wrote a foreword, which I'm sure Chavo Sr. is turning over in his grave, or turning over in heaven, or turning over in hell, if he learned that. But at that point, though, he told me in that our last conversation, he's just not mad at Conan anymore.
Oh, that's good.
And it's over. Like, and he was also super mad at Vicky Guerrero. Hated her.
There's probably a lot of family stuff to that one, though.
Quick story is that basically Vicky, after Eddie passed away, kept the kids away from their mother, who I believe is still alive.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, that's pretty much the end of it. They never liked each other much, but at that point, it was
Yeah.
like for whatever reason that is. Obviously, he doesn't know because
Yeah.
and I did get that corroborated from another source, so that did happen.
And if those were the facts I had to go on, I would be very grumpy as well. So
Yeah, so I did hear that from another family member in like brief conversations with them. So
yeah,
that appears to be true. So his hatred towards her was well founded, but apparently later, not too soon before he passed away, was when they made him, or when, well, not amends with him, but amends with the mother.
gotcha.
Yeah,
That's good. That's good.
yeah.
Well, you mentioned that 2 people have done forwards for this book, because
Three actually.
I was just going to ask, is there any more?
Bill Watts.
Bill Watts too. Nice.
Yeah, yeah. So Bill Watts did one, and that was also really interesting too, because Bill Watts has a reputation for being racist, as I'm sure you've heard those stories.
I've heard a few.
Yes, yeah. But Chavo told me, he said, like, I didn't want to work for him because I heard that, but that was not at all what he experienced. The way Chavo sort of put it, and was, Bill will just call things the way he sees it, and if you think otherwise, so be it. But no, he had a great relationship with Bill Watts that he never saw coming.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, now I got 3 more reasons to buy this book.
Yeah, because Chavo had dealt with a lot of that stuff, stuff that I don't think he even really understood what he was dealing with at the time. In my opinion. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm so intrigued. Now I got to check out this instant classic. And it is available now on Amazon. And
it is on Amazon. Yes.
Perfect. Any other places that you know of that it's available?
That's the only place I put it on, but we're going to put it on Kindle in the new year.
So perfect.
Yeah, so we're gonna put it up that way, and it was a pleasure to have gotten to know him. It really was. Chavo's one of those guys that if he likes you, he likes you. Also to his detriment, if he doesn't, he's gonna hold a grudge for a while. And
he doesn't hide his feelings.
He does not hide his feelings, and that's got him fired and sometimes hired in many a place. I mean, he's like, there's so many things I didn't even know. Like, also when he was trying to build a territory in El Paso, like some of the issues he had with the Von Erichs. Well, actually, just Brits.
I didn't even know he tried to build that.
Yeah, I mean, because he took a lot of that from his dad. I mean, I told him that he's got a story that actually is a Disney movie. Like, before he was a wrestler.
Okay.
So you ever see the movie Stand and Deliver?
Yes.
Okay. So you take a little bit of Lean on Me. So before he was a pro wrestler, and he was just wrestling part-time for his dad, he was a school teacher in El Paso. So he was a wrestling / history teacher.
Like all wrestling / history teachers.
Yes. Yes, he could have been Dean Douglas. Thank God Vince didn't know that, huh? But yeah, so he was that, and so he coached there for 3 years, and he took over a program that was nowhere. So they in their first year they lost every meet. Second year they went 500. Oh, but in the first year he kicked out everybody, and just pretty much just said, if you're not into this, then go, leave. So like, hence that Lean on Me moment.
Yeah.
That expelled moment that I think made us all sort of love Morgan Freeman and be thankful that we weren't in his school. But so there was that. So he did that, kicked off all the people. And then he pretty much was focusing on the young Hispanic kids because it was more like half Hispanic, half white. And so it was all sort of like helping out with the Hispanic kids. Actually, there is a fourth forward by one of his students who unfortunately has since passed away. So talking about what he learned with Chavo as his teacher. And so in the final year, they won city. But here's how they won city. His top student had to beat Hector from the other high school, Hector Guerrero.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So, I mean, if that doesn't sort of like play out into a whole movie, it does.
Yeah. Now I see what you mean. That is totally a Disney movie right there.
Right. I mean, like you could definitely do something with that.
That is excellent.
Yeah.
All right, everybody out there, instant classic, the Chavo Guerrero Sr. story by Kirk. Make sure you get it on Amazon. And not only that, check out his website too, notinhalloffame.com. Now, real quick on that, you said you rank people on there?
Yeah, basically, it just started off as a blog where I ranked those who were not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and then morphed into a bunch of others, and then an interview site, then podcasting, and then interviews, and a bunch of things. And so we were a little mock committee where a bunch of us diehard football fans, actually some people were in the Pro Football Research Association. So we just filmed one of those recently. So we have to do another one now that we've got to the final. So yeah, I mean, there's lots of content on it. So
that's the fun thing about these kind of things, though. They evolve and they
Mhm.
turn into what they're supposed to be. So I'm excited to watch this.
Yeah.
All right, everybody else out there, again, one more time. Instant classic, Chavo Guerrero Sr. story by Kirk Buchner. Make sure you get it. And Kirk, we'll get you back on here again very soon.
Well, I'd love to. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, you got it. We'll talk to everybody later.